Hello and welcome back. Instead of having a brand new lesson today, since we've talked about a lot of things recently, going from classes and methods to data types, all the way down to for loops, and we've talked about a lot. So instead of going on and moving on with Java, let's take our skills and knowledge to a higher level and kind of make something with all the skills that we've had. And so today, instead of having a new lesson, learning a new concept, we're going to take all the lessons and concepts that we just learned and put them together into a rock, paper, scissors game. So before we start writing any code, I'm going to go over here to our SRC. And if you don't have this, you probably have a view like this. All you have to do is just click this little tab, go down to our SRC, go to new, and we are just going to create a new file. And we are going to name this file planning planning for rock paper scissors, so rps dot txt. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and then I'm going to get rid of this little tab over here, just so that I have a full space over here. Now what we want to do here is we want to go and basically plan out our code, since many times we enter coding knowing what we want to do and what we want the output to be. However, that's not always the case, and sometimes we mess up. So we want to have like some kind of a game plan or a guide to help us through our coding experiences. So I'm going to be splitting this video up into at least two parts, but I'm not sure how many parts it'll be. And today we'll just go ahead and plan everything out, and then we can start writing some very basic code. But in the next video, we'll jump into some more code. And so, first of all, what we want to do is our goal is to create a rock, paper, scissors game with Java. So that's our goal. And so this goal basically has three main parts, right? We're gonna have two teams, right? One of them is going to be the user, and then the second one is going to be the computer. So, and then those are the teams. So we're gonna be having a user section, a computer section, a calculating section, and then a display section. So I said there are three parts because you can put the calculating and display together. However, for us, I just we'll make it four parts. So we'll have user, computer, calculating, and display. So let's talk about user. So what we want to have with a user is we want to take an input, then we want to store that input in a variable, and then we want to later compare that input, right? And we kind of want to do that with the computer as well, but instead of taking in input, we're just going to randomly generate input, store input, and then again later compare input. For the calculating part, what we're going to do is here I'm going to give myself some space so I can scroll up. There we are. For the calculating portion, what we want to do is we want to have basically what we want to see, like if there's rock and the other person gives rock, that's going to be equal to a tie. If it's rock and paper, then paper wins. If it's rock, then scissors, then rock wins. And then so on and so forth. So we can talk about calculating in a second. And then finally, what we want to work on is our display. And that's basically going to say, user won because they had paper, or something like, sorry you lost, the computer had rock, something like that. So that's just going to be a simple print statement, nothing too hard. Let's go back over here and talk about our calculating. We also have let's say, so the format that I'm going to use for this is, let's say we have user versus computer. And I've shown this right here with RR, RP, RS. So in this case, user is all rock and computer are these RPS. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say, what if the user picked paper? Well, if they have paper again, that's going to be equal to tie. If they have paper and they picked, and the computer picked rock, well, if you look at this case, you can see that the person who had paper wins. So we don't need to rewrite this code if it's already written right here. We just have to basically flip who wins. So in this case, the person with paper or computer would have won. But in this case, the person who had paper was the user. So user would win. So in this case, it would still be paper. But we need to tell them that, hey, in this case, it'd be the user. In the other case, it would be the computer. And then the final case, since this is a repeat, I don't need to type this. And the final case would be if the computer picked scissors, in which case it would be scissors that wins, right? And then the final case would be if the user picked scissors. Well, if they picked scissors and the computer picked scissors, that'd be a tie. If the user had scissors and the computer had rock, well, you can see it's kind of like the one right here where the rock would win. So we would write equals rock. And then right here will be scissors and paper. And here we can see that in this case the scissors would win, so we have scissors. However, these last two pieces are repeats, so we don't really need to code that. So this is basically all that we have, and this is our pseudocode. So it's not legitimate code, but it's basically an outline type of code. But instead of just taking it like this, let's try to go on and break it up a little bit farther on so that when we start coding, it'll be much easier for us to see. So take an input. Now we know that this requires a scanner, so we're going to have an import statement. We're going to need to set up the scanner object, and then finally take in the input. So that's, this section right here. Now storing that input, we can store it in a string or we can store it in an int, and I'll show you which one, how we can take it into an int. So I'm gonna just give myself some space right here, and let's say int, well, let's start with string. So if I have string input, I can just say, okay, rock, paper, scissor, like which one would you want? And they would type back rock, paper, or scissors. But the issue with string input is, what if somebody gives me back rock? Or they misspell it, they spell it like this, or they capitalize it wrong, something like that, right? Well, my code only understands ROCK with everything being lowercase. If somebody gives me this, my code will not be able to understand that. So instead of having a string input, it would be better to take in instead int input. And we can have that by having, for example, rock is going to be equal to 0, paper is going to be equal to 1, and then scissors is going to be equal to 2. So I could ask them, what would you like? And then we can show them, rock is equal to 0, paper is equal to 1, and scissors is equal to 2. And we can show them like this, and then they can type in 1 or 0 or 2 and something, and then our computer will understand, hey, 1 is always 1. 1 can't be 1.0, 1 can't be anything, it's an int value, it'll be taken like that. So it kind of reduces the confusion. So it's best if we take in some kind of int input. So I'm going to take back my space here, just kind of keep it a little clean, and over here we can say, back to our input, we can just copy and paste this section over here, and then later compare that input. Well, this comparison is kind of happening over here in this calculations, and we can kind of go back to that. And again, for the computer, randomly generate some kind of number. Again, if we go with the number system, we can use math.random, and then basically use that to generate a value from 0 to 2. And if you recall from our other lessons, we can achieve this, so that's not going to be hard. Storing input, again, is going to be an int, and then comparing the input. So finally, we'll go down over here to our calculating portion once again. Our display are just going to be print statements, so we don't really need to worry about that. So for our calculating portion, what we're going to do is we're going to be having a total of 6 if statements. So here we can see there is number 1 all the way down to number 6. So we're going to be basically comparing, like, if, for example, user is rock and computer is paper, and then we're going to have basically an output that says, system.out, etc., etc., etc. That basically says if the user is rock and the computer is paper, then paper wins. And so therefore, instead of writing paper wins, we can write computer wins. And that would be it. So we would just have this kind of a system, except with 6 print statements and a little bit more complex code than this, but we can definitely talk that out. And so, like I said before, we're going to be splitting this video into at least 2 segments. But for today, instead of actually coding, we can at least write or create the file. So I'm going to go over here to my project tab, go down over src, right click, and we are going to be creating a new Java class. And we can name this, you can name it RPS. I'm going to name it rock, paper, scissors, and just hit enter, and our file has been created. And I'm not going to jump into any code except writing our main method. So from our first video, we know that the main method is going to be the first method, and we'll write it like this: public static void main, capital S, string with our box braces, arguments, and then our curly brace. And just to keep everything clean, I'm going to tag the ends of this, so end of the main method, and then this will be the end of class. And that is all for this video. Come back for my next video, and in that video we will start tackling some of these sections over here: the user, the computer, calculations, and then finally display. And we will eventually get our goal completed, and we'll create a rock, paper, scissors game with Java. Thank you for watching.